Hi, everybody. Well, there's a bunch of people in here already. Thank you so much for showing up. This is our fifth live stream in this second language learning series. I really appreciate everybody who's here. If you're in there, if you haven't been here, say hello, say your name, where you're from. If you've been here before, say hello just the same. It's nice to see familiar faces, and it's always great to see new people showing up. First, I would like to just make some general announcements. Give people some time to come in. Also, of course, thank you all for joining us today. I really appreciate your taking the time off of your weekend to join us here. Don't have a lot of channel updates other than I've been working really hard. The summer, usually I take it easy in the summer from teaching, but not on YouTube. I'm planning a lot of good stuff coming up, new videos, new series, and so forth. Please hit the like button now if you don't mind, so that other people get notified. Yen Chin from Canada, British Columbia, Canada, welcome. Haven't had anybody from Canada yet. Thank you so much for attending. Yeah, sorry, I already just said this. And okay, yeah, I will be kind of focused on the presentation, but go ahead and just chat with each other. I will keep an eye on the chat. Just make sure you follow community guidelines. Just be civil to each other and all that. It's okay to disagree, but just be kind to each other. I'm getting really good at controlling. You have no idea how many things I have to look at here in front of me. I have two monitors and all these different buttons, but I'm getting really good at automating everything and keeping an eye on the chat. So if you have any questions during the presentation, go ahead and ask. Eventually I will take a look and answer your question. Hello, Sylvia. Welcome back, Sylvia. Sylvia is from Italy. She's been a great supporter. She's been showing up to all live streams. It's been a pleasure to have you, Sylvia. Bienvenuta. Okay, I already said that. And yeah, I always forget about this. There is a button at the bottom of the chat box where you can send super chat. When you send a super chat, I can definitely see your name and something will flash on the screen. That is a way for you to get noticed. Like if you want to ask a question, you can send a super chat and I will make sure to answer your question. But it's also a way for you to show your support to the work that I'm doing, show your appreciation, kind of like passing a hat and contributing whatever you can. I enjoy what I do, but I have to pay the bills, and I appreciate everybody pitching in. Gregory from Singapore. Oh, that's the first person from Singapore. I have a lot of new countries coming in. Welcome, Gregory. I hope you enjoy the live stream. And finally, yeah, I'm on Instagram and Twitter. I haven't been very active on social media lately, other than an eventual post, because I'm busy. I'm busy creating videos and doing things. But every now and again, I check in. And actually, that's a good way for you to interact with me a little more closely. I'm very good at responding to every comment that people post, on videos. But YouTube doesn't have a very good system. Sometimes I just don't see a comment for, I don't know why. So if you want to, follow me on Instagram and Twitter, we can chat over there too. So let us get on with what we have here today. So today we're talking about improving your listening skills in your target language. That should be exciting. A lot of people get really worried about their listening. So let's see what what I can do to help you. So what are we doing today? We'll be talking about social, cultural, and psychological factors involved in listening. During the presentation, I will talk about some of these aspects. So take notes, pay attention, take notes. We'll talk about different types of listening. Usually, people think of listening as just this thing, that just happens. Somebody talks, you listen. But there are different types of listening. There are different ways that you can approach listening. And then finally, and I suppose that's what most of you are here for, we'll talk about practical things that you can do to develop listening fluency in your target language. Just as a reminder, no snake oil. I am not going to give you like the one trick that will fix all your problems. That doesn't really exist. There are no quick fixes, no one-size-fits-all solutions. So remember, whatever I recommend you should do here, it may work for you, it may not work for you. There's no one-size-fits-all solutions. You need to try things out and see what works for you. If something works, great, keep doing it. If something doesn't work, that's just the way it is. You need something different, okay? And I will give you several recommendations. Hopefully, one or two of them will work for you. Just some quick definitions. You will see these on the slides, and I'll be talking about these different things. When you talk about L1, that's what you call your native language or your mother tongue. L2 or target language. I use these kind of interchangeably. That's whatever language you're learning. Okay. We call it L2, but it doesn't have to be your second language. It could be your second, third, fourth. It's not your mother tongue. It's a language that you're learning, or your target language. Your target language, whatever language you're here for. Oh, I'm learning French. There's this guy on YouTube talking about improving your listening. I'm going to go watch him. So that's your target language, French. Or if you're learning Italian or English as a second language, that's your target language. And also always keep in mind that whatever I say here may be a little different depending on your learning context. In a very simplistic way, you could be learning a language as your second language. For example, you live in the United States and you're learning English. So you're learning English as a second language. Or you're living in Italy learning Italian. That's your L2, your second language. Or you're learning at home where people do not speak your target language, so it's a foreign language. You're learning it as a foreign language. Okay, just always keep that in mind. I may give you some recommendation here for listening, and you may say, but wait, I don't live in the United States. Well, in that case, you will need to be patient, wait for me to finish saying that, because that is not within your context, your learning context. So where are we in all these live streams? We talked about motivations. Depending on the type of motivation you have, you may not even be interested in listening. Listening is not an issue. You want to learn how to read the language, how to use the language to read and write, and listening should not be a problem. But I think a lot of people, I would say most people, want to learn the language as a whole, which includes listening, speaking, reading, writing, and so forth. So your motivations will be a factor in how much energy, how much effort you want to put into listening, speaking, reading, writing, pronunciation, and so forth. Your attitudes towards your target language is, do you have positive attitudes towards learning that language? Or is it something that, I have to learn this language even though I don't like it? There are ways that you can kind of change your attitude if you see what's going on, in your head, why you have such negative attitude, and make it more positive, or try to find a positive attitude to improve your learning. But also your attitude towards learning itself. Okay, if you have a negative attitude towards learning, if you think learning is like for geeks, it's going to change how much time and energy you spend on learning, of course. Okay, we talked about setting realistic learning goals. So if your goal is to come here and solve all your listening problems in 45 minutes to an hour, you have to have a little more realistic goals. And remember, I have no snake oil for you. We talked about some myths that I believe really get in the way when you believe certain things about language learning that are incorrect. Okay. All right. Now that we know all the stuff, all the background in the last 4 weeks, now it's time for actual learning to take place. Okay, I'm ready. I have a good attitude. I understand my motivations. What do I do now? So let's talk about listening as a skill. Now, there's some misconceptions around listening. First, a lot of people think that listening, or they see listening as a discrete skill. That means it's a skill that you learn separately. Listening has nothing to do with anything else. You only need good ears. If you have good ears, you're fine. Not really. When you take language, you need to take language as a whole. Okay, you have listening, speaking. You have to learn vocabulary, grammar. There are all these cognitive things going on in your head. If you only look at listening, you're missing out on a lot that's going on. Okay, for example, can you separate out listening from vocabulary or grammar? That'd be kind of hard, right? Because you need to understand the language, to understand what people are saying to you. You need to have the vocabulary. You need to know what the words they're saying mean, and you need to have the grammar to understand if they're saying something in the past or future, and how the language is organized. So these things work hand in hand. However, just to make it easier for us to talk about all these different skills, in this particular session, we'll talk about listening as a discrete skill. But remember, you have to put it back into the language because everything is interdependent. Okay. Another misconception is that listening is a passive skill. Okay, you just sit there and you listen, right? You can do that. You can listen passively, but you can't just keep practicing. It's like if you turn on the radio and listen to your target language. You just keep listening, keep practicing it. Well, it's not really passive. It's something that you need to engage in. You need to actively try to understand until you get headaches. We take a look at the chat. I've been following your YouTube channel. I'm sorry, let me show you the chat. It's from Gregory. I've been following your YouTube channel for some years now. Wow, and I have found your ideas both simple and stimulating. Thanks for doing so faithfully. Well, Gregory, thank you. Wow, that is like great compliments. I'm glad you've been around for so long, and I depend on people supporting the channel. If no one likes it, and if no one is watching, what am I doing? Thank you so much, Gregory. I appreciate it. Carlos09 from Spain. Carlos 9 from Spain. Welcome. Perk, I forgot where you're from. Perk. Welcome back, Perk. Geeks are sexy. Yes, I agree. That's great. And also, if you look at the very top of the chat, that was put there automatically, but I think it's kind of nice. Rahul Khate or Kate. Rahul is a new supporter. He's a paying supporter now, and I really appreciate it. Moht from India, welcome. And Perk is from Madrid, that's right. So we have a couple of people from Spain here. I appreciate your taking the time to support the channel and to be here, and hopefully I can teach you something new. I'll do my best. Okay, so is listening really a discrete skill? What's the reality? Well, listening involves other components, as you know I was mentioning. One of the components that's really important is phonological awareness. Phonological awareness. Essentially, whatever target language you're learning, do you know the sounds of that language? When you learn a new word and somebody tries to teach you a new word, or somebody says a new word in that language, can you tell what sounds make up that word? A lot of times people don't. They just they try to, imitate the sounds, but they have no clue. For example, in English, you have a difference between beat, bit, bet, bat, bait, bot. People go, what? They get really confused because all these words, the only difference is the vowel, right? And they have no awareness that in English you have e, I, a, and so forth, right? So once you get some kind of phonological awareness, you start predicting, oh, this word, it's either beat or bit. It's either bait or bet, okay? That is a skill that often is not taught when you learn a language. A lot of times they don't teach you to recognize the sounds in the language, but you can do that through practice. And now I'm telling you, there is such a thing, and you should try to understand. And it's very easy to look it up. However, this will be, we'll talk about that in the pronunciation part of the series, which will be in a week. Okay. As I mentioned, you need to know vocabulary, grammar, and so forth. Something that's very important in listening is the background knowledge of the topic. A lot of times people say, oh, I don't understand, let's say, like when I teach English, my students will listen to something and they say, I don't understand anything. Then when we start talking about the topic, I realize that they have no idea what the topic is. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult to understand something in your language when you have no idea what the topic is. You understand the words, but you can't quite figure out what the person is saying. If you're learning that language, if that's your second language, it's even harder. And many people interpret this lack of understanding as, oh, it's my listening, okay? So you need to build a lot of background knowledge in different topics around that language, cultural topics, understand the history of that place, whatever country uses that language. That will influence how well you can understand. Well, that has to do with familiarity with the culture, and also your ability to process information in the language. Okay, it's kind of interesting. We don't have time to go deep into this, but in your L1, in your native language, you can hear new information, and your brain will understand the words, understand the sounds, understand the words, and then process that information. You keep that information in your in your head long enough for you to process that information. For many reasons, when you hear the same thing in a second language, even if you understood the words, it's hard for you to process that information. It's almost like you understand the words and the words leave your head. As soon as they come in, they leave your head, and you don't have time to process that information. So that's also part of listening. You have to learn how to process information in the new language. And that's not easy, and it takes time. Okay. That here should be passive. Is it a passive skill? So let's talk about listening as a passive skill. Amelia, welcome. I don't remember Amelia from before. Very welcome. Ellison, you were late today. Ellison is from Brazil. And Roxana, greetings. Good afternoon, everybody. Roxana is one of the members. Notice that she has a little pin. Before, when she came, she had a little yellow star. Now she has a little a purple pin. That means that she has been a member for a month. I started this about a month ago, the memberships. Roxana was one of the first members, and she got a purple pin now. Yay! Thank you so much, Roxana. I appreciate it. Morocco, Mila Bimila, welcome from Morocco. Okay, so is listening really a passive skill? Well, effective listening takes the ability to predict information. We can do that in our native language, right? So, you're listening to information, and you start predicting the information that's going to come later, and then you just confirm whether or not it's true. In a new language, it's a little more difficult for you to, again, back to processing, right? To predict information. You need the ability to process the information. Again, that is an active skill. I can just sit somewhere, and sometimes it happens, right? Someone is talking to you, but you're thinking about, what you're going to cook for dinner. So you're listening, but you're not really listening. You're not processing the information. You're not making that connection to the spoken words. And then somebody asks you a question, and you go, what? I'm sorry, I was not listening. That happens in your even in your native language. In a second language, you need to have this ability to focus on the information, make connections, process all the information, and you need the ability to engage. Okay, even if you're watching a video, I'm not talking about engagement just because someone is talking to you, but like you're watching a video, you need to be able to engage with the materials. As you're listening, you're going, what does that mean? Oh, you start thinking of questions. You're engaging. That is an activity. You're not just receiving information. You're processing it. You're asking questions. You're engaging with the material. So yes, listening does take practice. Getting headaches is a good sign. I remember when I was in Germany, and I really started learning the language. I started really focusing, started making friends. I would get headaches at the end of the day, and I'd go home and say, I don't want to hear or speak a word of German for a few hours, because my brain had been processing and engaging with all that information for hours, and it takes a lot of energy, and sometimes you get headaches from it. Okay, but you typically get headaches from it only if you engage with your listening actively. Okay, so when I went home in Germany and I had a headache, it meant that I was really engaging in that information. Okay, let's talk about different types of listening. So I have this here. It's kind of a very simplified version of what I want to tell you here, what's in my head. Think of this as a continuum, okay? So you have listening that can be very broad. So when you listen to something, you listen to the big idea. So it's a very broad type of listening. It's unfocused, and it's passive, okay? And you can go to more narrow, focusing in, more and more active. So you can be anywhere in here. However, it's more like a 3D. I don't know if this is going to make a lot of sense, but you can listen very broadly or very narrowly. Very broadly, you're just getting the main idea, or very narrowly, you're focusing on details. At the same time, you have very targeted listening. You know exactly what information you want to look for, or you just don't know. So it could be very broad, very targeted, but very passive. So that would put you back here. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, that's okay. Just think of it linearly, okay? Just keep that in mind. There are different types of listening. It can be very focused. It can be very broad. It can be passive, give me the information, or it can be very active, where you're really engaging in it. For example, when you're chatting with a friend, you're just chatting, so it's not very targeted. Okay, the topic changes all the time. You're not going to take notes because you have to learn what your friend is saying. You're just chatting with a friend, as opposed to listening to a YouTuber talking about his or her daily life. You get a lot of those on YouTube. People just turn on the camera and say, "Hi guys, today I did this, I did that. I went to talk to my friend," and you get to know that YouTuber. And then the next time they'll say, "Oh, remember last week this happened?" Blah blah blah. So again, it's kind of unfocused, but you do need to have some background information. You need to understand where they're coming from, some background information, and so forth. Okay, or you listen to a talk show, maybe like an interview, also on YouTube, but on TV. A talk show, the interviewer is talking to an actor. So the actor may be joking, saying nothing, and then the interviewer asks a question, and now it becomes more focused. Maybe the actor's talking about a movie that you're very interested in, so you're really focusing on the information. You want to learn about the movie and so forth. And maybe a cooking show would be a little different, because in a talk show, the conversation can go, all over the place. In a cooking show, it's even more targeted, right? You have to learn something now, okay? Here, you don't necessarily have to learn anything. In a cooking show, if you want to, have something nice for dinner, you need to learn the steps. You need to focus, and maybe you're even going to take notes while you're watching the show. You're going to take notes, write down the recipe, notes, and so forth. Okay, or the weather forecast. The weather forecast is extremely targeted. You want to know, is it going to rain tomorrow? What's the temperature going to be? And maybe an extended forecast for next week, and so forth. So you can tell that these are different, right? Or you have a lesson about your favorite topic, or a lesson about a topic you know nothing about. Now, see how from here to here, this has changed completely. Okay, and the key word here is a lesson. Okay, a cooking show is a kind of a lesson also. Maybe it should be here, but here specifically, it's a lesson. Okay, we're going into the realm of instructional materials that you're listening to. Here, you have to engage. You cannot just listen passively. Probably you need to take notes, ask questions, try to connect the material from the beginning of the lesson to the end of the lesson, and so forth. Okay, very different types of listening. Or you watch a documentary on a topic about which you know a great deal already. Oh, I already know this topic. I'm very interested in it. So it's going to be easier for you to understand the vocabulary, the background information, so forth. Or a documentary on a topic you know something about or nothing. Okay. Of course, if you know nothing about it, you're not going to have the same understanding as someone who already knows a great deal about it, even in your native language. Okay? Even in your native language, if you watch a documentary about something you're really interested in, you've been reading about it since, for years you've been learning about that topic, it's going to be much easier for you to understand the documentary, to listen to the information and absorb it, than a topic you know nothing about. Okay? It just makes sense, right? Okay, so let's compare these two. So you're watching a YouTube video about education, and you're talking to your child's teacher about her education or his education. You think what differences do you see between these two activities? You're watching a YouTube video about education, as opposed to talking to your child's teacher about her education. And difference? Lithuania. Wow, we're getting like the whole world here. It's very late in Lithuania, isn't it? Or maybe not. Sometimes when I listen the foreign language being spoken, I pay attention to the breaths and emotions and the message being delivered. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about focusing in just a minute. Don't feel bad about it that you're paying attention to things that don't necessarily matter. It's just that everything is new in the language, and you don't know, what you should focus your attention on. We'll talk about it in a minute. Katie Denson, welcome back, Katie. You have to pay closer attention to the teacher. There's more at stake, right, Katie? It's like, this is real. I have to talk. I have to understand this teacher because, my child's education is at stake here. See, Ellison says, talking to the child may require more of a speaker than, more speaking than listening. Yeah, okay, so if you're talking, you're not just watching, right? You're watching a YouTube video. You may ask some questions, think about it, look something up later, as opposed to talking. Remember, we just talked about listening as a discrete activity, but it's really hard, right? Because in real life, when you're listening to someone while they're talking to you, you have to listen, but you also have to reply, you have to respond, okay? So get these two things together. What Katie said, you have to pay closer attention to the teacher. It's important information. You really have to focus on understanding what the teacher's saying, right? And what Ellison said, that you also have to respond. You have to be able to take in the information, understand, formulate ideas in your head, formulate a response, and talk to the teacher or ask questions. Make sure that you get a lot of engagement in there. Okay, I can always count on you guys for great answers. So remember, listening is a multifaceted skill. Do not limit your listening to listening alone. Okay? Don't limit your listening to listening alone. When you're listening, you have to engage everything that you know about the language, not just listening. I don't mean to scare anybody. Oh my God, this is so complicated. It's not complicated, it's complex. Okay? And it's language is very complex behavior, involves a lot of complex behaviors. It takes a lot of processing. But you've been doing it all your life, right? Since you were a baby, you were learning how to speak and how to listen and how to do all that stuff. You just happen to be doing it in a new language now. And yeah, sometimes it kind of sucks, but I love it. I love learning languages. And keep that in mind. Phonological awareness takes time to develop, okay? Remember, I said that what phonological awareness is, like, do you know what sounds exist in your target language? That takes time. Okay, what Choice was saying, that sometimes you're paying attention to everything else except the content. Well, you're developing some phonological awareness. You're trying to figure out what the sounds are and why the person is moving their mouths the way they are. It takes time. Okay, until it becomes second nature. All right, so let's talk about activities. I'm sure that's what you guys came here for. Let me move to this one here. Okay, so what can you do? So we're ready to start talking about activities. Well, if you're learning a language, chances are you have a language textbook, and they will have some kind of listening activity. You can use those. The problem with activities in textbooks, in any language textbook, is that they are designed to help you develop a particular skill. So typically, if you're at a very basic level, they will you will listen to dialogues of people saying, "Hello, how are you? What's for dinner? I don't know. What would you like to have?" They're very simple dialogues. The dialogues, or even if you have a passage like a paragraph, they will have a lot of vocabulary that you already know. Maybe a few new words just to make it exciting. That's not real life. right? When like you're talking to your child's teacher, your child's teacher is not going to choose the words that you know. They don't even know what words you know or don't know. Okay, they're just going to speak the language, and you just need to understand it somehow, right? So it's okay to use activities in a textbook, but keep in mind that they're limited. Okay, they may get you started, they may give you some useful information. It's practice. Practice is practice, but the language goes way beyond that. Here's one activity. I don't know if this is going to work, but one activity is to listen to the radio. And you go, wait a minute, I'm learning Japanese. How can I listen to Japanese if I'm living, in Morocco or Italy or the United States? So there's this site, which I find very interesting. It's called radio.garden. That's the address, http radio.garden. Okay. Let's say you're learning Japanese. It may not work. I'll do my best. So you go to radio.garden and you look for Japan. And then these dots represent radio stations in Japan. So I stop at this dot here. It's probably some comedy show. Yeah, a lot of times they're playing American music. See, in Brazil. You click here for play. And they're playing American music. Let me see, Spanish, noticias. Nope.
Conoce el Comer Tecnológico y aprovecha que te bonificamos en tu monedero naranja en 20% por tus compras en farmacia. Consulta restricciones en tienda hasta julio 9.
Es momento de redescubrir tus espacios.
Okay, well, it kind of worked. So you can actually just get the globe, look around the globe, and wherever you see a country that speaks the language you're interested in, Arabic, Egypt. A lot of times you have a lot of like music, a lot of American music. But if you explore this, again, it's called radio.garden. If you explore the globe, there's a way, I should have showed you that. Okay, there's a way that you can go down here and you favorite it. You can create an account and save like your favorite radio stations. So if you find radio stations that are like talk radio, talk the news, talk, no music, that's the one that you want, right? You don't want to, if you're learning Japanese, you don't want to go to a radio station in Japan that plays American music all the time. So you can like favorite your radio stations here. So when you go back to the site, you can go to those radio stations that have talk radio. So you can listen to the language being spoken. Yeah, perk. I find it pretty cool too. The good news is that I've apparently acquired enough Spanish that I can understand commercials. Spanish is a cool language. Okay, the problem with listening to radio shows, well, there are several problems, and this is up to you. You have to make these decisions on your own. When you listen to the radio, there are no visual cues. You don't see the person talking. There are no pictures. as opposed to, for example, watching the news on TV, where you see something happening and then you hear what they're saying about that. It's easier. So if you're, a very basic Japanese learner, be careful, okay? Be real, okay? I want to listen to Japanese on the radio. Fine, go here, go to radio.garden, listen to Japanese, but don't get all frustrated because, I can't understand anything. I understand a few words here and there. You're getting used to the sounds of the language. You can understand words here and there. Over months and years, you can start noticing, I remember when I used to go to this radio station, I understood 1%. Now I can understand 75% of what they're saying. So you'll feel good about yourself. Okay, don't be all down on yourself because, I can't understand everything they say in Japanese. Of course not. You just started learning. If you're an intermediate to advanced learner, I think this is a good option to do. Also, Google TV, like if you're learning Japanese, TV stations or TV stations online streaming Japanese, and some websites will show you like lists of radio stations, TV stations, newspapers, everything. Just Google that information and you'll be able to see it. Videos have visual cues as well. So there are like myriad YouTube channels in your native language, Snap Language if you're learning English, TED Talks. TED Talks are a little more academic. You can watch TV shows. If you don't live in the country that speaks the language, get online and see if you can find places that stream television shows. You can watch movies, documentaries, etc. Okay, so you're creating your own experience. Besides the textbook, you're going after things to listen to. In a second language context, that is, if you're living in the country where the language is spoken, take a course. Take a course, but not in your target language. Okay, let me rephrase that. Don't take a language course. Take a course, okay? So let's say you're living in France, you want to learn French. You can take a French course, but then you go back to, the instructional materials. All the listening materials are for students, right? Well, if you want to diversify, if you want the real language, the way people speak, take a cooking course, okay? Take a pottery course, take an art course in France, which will probably be in French. So that's a way for you to learn something in French, and you will be practicing your listening because you were listening to your teacher. You'll interact with the students in that taking the same course. And logically, many of them will be French speakers, or will be French people. There are clubs depending on the country. Like in the United States, you have a club for everything, for all sorts of interests. Join a support group. Okay, same thing. It depends on the country you live in. Support groups are a big thing in the United States. You can find support groups for all sorts of things. Join a club, join a group, take a course, and you will be exposed to the language as it is spoken. You will be practicing your listening and a lot more, and the culture and everything. Okay. When you choose your listening activities, let me check the comments here real quick before we move on. Let's see. I have a bunch of people today. Hello, Randolph. American pop culture is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's hard to learn a language. I mean, if you speak English, it's hard to learn a language because you go abroad and everybody speaks English, and you listen to American music on the radio and so forth. You're very welcome. I think the radio idea is kind of cool. seems good, like good advice. Snap Language gives good advice, Randolph. I try. All right, thanks, guys. Okay, so how do you choose? How do you pick? You know, if you have radio stations online, you can watch TV online. You can do all these different things. Take a course, do all these different things. How do I pick? Okay, here are a few things to think about. So, if possible, pick something that is at or just above your listening level or your language level. Okay. It's like what I said, like if you're listening to the radio in Japanese, but your level is way, 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 way below what you would expect on the radio in Japan, just be careful about it, okay? If possible, try to choose something that's at your level, okay? Many people say, oh, listen to like children's programs. I'm not sure that that's really all that helpful because, like, when you read like a story for children, the language is kind of difficult. They talk about little animals and little, you know, fantastical things and creatures and this and that. So it's not always a good idea. But, you know, if you're lucky and you find children's television or programming that, you know, doesn't go to all this crazy childhood stuff, it would be an option. Or, you know, listen to whatever you have available, but keep your expectations in check. Okay, don't go crazy thinking that you're at a very basic level. You're going to, you know, listen to the radio and understand everything. No. It's crazy, right? You're still learning, you're still developing your feel for the language and everything. And also try to mix instructional and genuine materials. Like I said, it's okay for you to get a textbook and go through all the listening exercises there, do the whole instructional stuff, go to YouTube, find instructional materials in English, but also find genuine materials, meaning things that were not designed to teach you the language, okay? Things that are just out there for anybody to listen to, native speakers or non-native speakers, okay? Because that's where you get the language as it is used, not by a teacher who's trained to teach you, but just people. And also to try to, if possible, do a mix of online activities or virtual activities, things you can do on the phone and stuff like that, or things you can do at home just listening, but also in-person activities. Okay, the more you get to talk to someone, I don't care if the person is a native speaker or another student of that language, the more you use the language and interact, listening, speaking, doing everything in that language, the more you develop your feel for the language. Okay. Now here's what I forgot who it was that said that they listen to everything, like the sounds. I think it was Choice, who pays attention to everything. Okay, so how do you listen? Okay, my advice is focus on understanding the content. After all, that's why we have language, right? We communicate ideas using the language. So when you listen to something, don't focus so much on the sounds, on, you know, how the person's moving their mouth and stuff, because if you're paying attention to all of that, you're not listening. You're not focusing on understanding what is being said. Okay, or focus on understanding the content first. Okay, then if you want to pay attention to other things, okay, now that I understand the content, let me go back and try to understand some other stuff that I found strange or interesting or something I want to focus on. Okay, and again, keep your expectations in check. give you an example here. So let's say you use a video, okay? First, watch the whole material. Watch the whole video, focusing on understanding the content. What are they saying? What are they trying to teach me? Are they telling me a story? What's the story that they're telling me? Forget everything else. Forget, how they're moving their mouths. Forget the sounds of the language. If possible, forget the grammar. Just focus on understanding the content. Let your brain do the listening part, okay? Then you can go back and rewatch that video, or maybe rewatch a part of that video. Whoops. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, then you go back and you rewatch all of the video or a portion of the video that you want to focus on. And now you're going to do some learning. Okay, you're going to do some more focused learning. Remember, I talked about different types of listening, broad and focused, very narrow. Now that you understand the content, you're going to go back and you're going to focus on, what are the parts? Maybe there's new vocabulary. This is the time that you're going to do it. You're going to take notes, maybe write an outline. You're still focusing on the content, okay? But you're just breaking it into parts. You're going to listen for the whole thing, go back, take notes, break it down, outline, draw a picture, do whatever helps you get that information on a piece of paper, okay? Roxana, super chat. Yay! Thank you so much, Roxana. You're awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Roxana, you rock. I get to pay the bills now. Thank you, Roxana. Then after you've done that, you've listened, then you listen again and you took notes, summarize that information, okay? You do it in the target language, okay? You just write it down. You can do a formal summary, just write out everything that you learned in that lesson. Now you have your notes, you have your outline. Or you can just tell someone what you learned. When you tell someone what you learned on the video, it can even be in your native language. Okay, if you have someone that you can explain what you saw in your target language, great. If not, just talk to someone in your native language, in your first language, and tell them, oh, I saw this video and they said blah, blah. Then you summarize information. Remember what I said earlier, that we have a really hard time in a new language understanding the information, taking it in, processing it, and actually learning something. You'll be practicing that. So you're practicing listening, then you're practicing learning from your listening in your target language. And you're really going to, take it home when you talk about it, okay? If you can do this with someone else who also watched the same video, great. If not, just, tell a friend or tell, relatives, oh, I saw this video today, and just, tell them. If you have a really hard time retelling or summarizing the information, that shows that, yeah, I still need to keep practicing this, okay? Another example, let's say instead of a video, you do a podcast. Now it gets a little harder, right? Because you're just listening. It's like listening to the radio or a podcast. I think the podcasts are, internet radio. It's kind of the same principle. And also you don't have to tune in. You can listen to a podcast anytime you want. Okay, again, listen to the whole material. Enjoy the podcast, okay? And focus on understanding what the podcast is about. What are they saying? If there's an interview, what is the content of the interview? Content. What is the content? What do I need to learn? Okay, don't focus so much on the sounds and all that stuff, okay? Then you can go back, listen to it again, the whole thing, or just a portion of it that you want to focus on. Take notes, outline, draw pictures, whatever you need to do to focus on that content and put that content on a piece of paper. Then you summarize it, tell a friend, talk about it. Okay, summarize it in the target language, if possible. If not, just go talk to your spouse and say, "Oh, I need to tell you about this thing I saw today in the language I'm learning," and tell them. Another example: get something familiar, something that you already know something about. So you find listening sources in your target language. If you find something that you are already familiar with, great. That will help you understand the content. You already know something about it. If you're not familiar with it, well, familiarize yourself with it first. Okay. Then you go back, listen for content, take notes. Now repeat what I did before. So we're just like playing on different things here. You see, I have a website here. This is NPR, National Public Radio in the United States. The reason I'm showing you this particular website, so it's npr.org. I like this because they have news, they have interviews, they have a lot of, good information. Maybe it's something that you've already heard about. So, I have it here. No, wait a minute. Yeah, so this is something that they have that I've already heard about. Johnson & Johnson vaccine protects against Delta variant of COVID. Study found. Oh, I already know this. Okay, I'm sorry. You're learning English as a second language. So this example is for people that are learning English as a second language. Oh, I heard this in my native language. I heard about, Johnson & Johnson protecting against the Delta variant. So I'm familiar with it. Now you can click here and read the article. So you're going to familiarize yourself with it. Or you can come here.
The Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine appears to be highly effective against the very contagious and deeply worrying Delta variant.
And if you look down here, this is what they're saying. So let me go back here.
The Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine appears to be highly effective against the very contagious and deeply worrying Delta variant.
Okay. So you're creating your own listening lesson, okay? Or if I don't want to read, I've already listened to the whole thing to understand the content. Then I went back, I read the article, I already knew something about it. Then I played it and I read along. Now let me play it again and just listen, okay? Because now I'm really, really, really familiar with this. So you can listen to this 5, 10, 20 times, if you want. But first, you're going to listen for the content. You're going to learn the content. Always learn the content first, okay? Then you're going to go back, and now you're going to study, okay? You're going to take notes if you want to do it that way, or you're going to read along if you want to do it that way, or you're just going to go back and listen, and then it's like, ooh, and you have you can go back 15 seconds.
That's according to a new direct evaluation of the vaccine. The Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine appears to be highly effective. The Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine. Okay,
so you can work on that specific part. I mean, you can do a lot with this. Chances are in your target language, there is a website that has, news articles and also videos that go with the article. So you can read it. You can read it to familiarize yourself, and then you can go watch the video and just listen and learn the content. Then you can go back, rewatch the video. I think in most major languages, that's how they're delivering the news nowadays. I can't speak for all languages, but if you dig on the internet, you should be able to find something similar to this, okay, where you can read, listen, watch videos on the topic. And again, you already knew something about that topic, or if you didn't know, well, they had the article there so you could familiarize yourself first and then go back and listen. And now the listening is going to be easier. You're going to get more out of your listening because you already have a background on it. Yes, Ellison, that's very nice. You just need to go after stuff like that and find things. Another let's see, Randolph Richardson said another good news source is CBC Radio 1. That's from Canada, right? Yeah, this is run by our Canadian government. Has no commercials and a wide variety of educational programming intermixed with news programming. It's out there. Okay? If you're learning English, you're lucky because the internet, there's a huge amount of content on the internet. But then you could say, oh, but the content is not designed for me, who's learning English as a second language. Well, that's why you're here, right? I'm telling you that you can use these techniques, these activities that you can create your own, on your own. You create your own lesson. And by the way, I'm focusing on listening, but you can use this to listen to understand the content first. Then you read the article. Now you're practicing your reading, okay? Then you go back, you listen again, and you take notes. You're practicing writing and so forth, right? Then you can go back and, click the button to go 15 seconds back, and you can repeat, the vocabulary or the sentences. So you can create like your whole language course on your own. Excuse me. I think it was Ellison who said that she likes to find ways to learn the language without spending any money. Well, that's one way that you can do it, Ellison. Oh, thank you, Roxana. I'm glad you're enjoying it. How are we doing on time here? Oop. Oh, wow. All right, let me skip on this one here. Okay, so some final words. I didn't realize we are like up on an hour already. So remember, let me show you something here. I'll feel terrible if I don't. So this is an Italian teacher on YouTube. I particularly like him. He's really good. In this particular video here, he is just speaking Italian, okay? It's a little simple Italian because, he's teaching Italian, but he's not really too concerned about vocabulary or everything. He's just talking. He's just speaking a little slower. So let's say that you want to use his video to first listen to the whole thing and focus on the content, and then you want to go back and focus a little more on some other stuff. So let's see.
Il mio vizio, preparo il caffè. Preparo il caffè e vado sul balcone dove mi siedo.
I'm sorry.
E ammiro il panorama. Il mio vizio, mi sveglio e generalmente è alle 4:30, massimo le 5. Mi alzo, faccio le mie cose, mi lavo la faccia, mi lavo i denti.
Okay, he's talking too fast. I hate the native speakers speak too fast, okay? Let's say you have an interest in what he just said here. He's talking about his daily routine. I'm sorry, I have allergies. So he wakes up, he washes his face, he brushes his teeth and stuff, and then he goes about his day. So there's this particular section here after I listened for the content. Now I want to focus on exactly what he's saying, right? So I go back and I hit the arrow button to go back, have the arrow to go forward, arrow to go back. I go back 5 seconds on YouTube.
Eccetera, eccetera. Faccio le mie cose, mi lavo la faccia, mi lavo i denti, mi alzo, faccio le mie cose, mi lavo la faccia, mi lavo i denti, mi alzo, faccio le mie cose, mi lavo la faccia.
I'm like, oh, it's too fast. It's too fast. Well, if you go to settings on YouTube, click settings, go to playback speed. Let's put it to 0.75 and listen to it again.
Mi lavo i denti, faccio le mie cose, mi lavo la faccia, mi lavo i denti, eccetera. Faccio le mie cose, mi lavo la faccia, mi lavo i denti, eccetera.
You can even go absolutely crazy and set it to like half
Il mio
speed.
vizio, 4 e mezzo. Mi alzo, faccio le mie cose, mi lavo la faccia, mi lavo i denti.
Okay, that's boring. But at 0.75, it slows down enough that it still sounds normal. But I can focus on that part. Oh, how did he say that? How did he say that? So I can listen to it a few times, just using the arrow keys to go back. And then after I listen and listen and listen, I come back here, I put it back to normal speed.
Con la finestra aperta. Attualmente è alle 4:30, massimo le 5. Mi alzo, faccio le mie cose, mi lavo la faccia, mi lavo i denti.
Mi lavo la mia faccia, mi lavo I denti, eccetera, eccetera. So that's another cool thing that's out there. A lot of people don't even know about it, or if they know about it, they don't realize they can use that for listening. All right, so real quick, final words. Listening skills develop over time. Be patient with yourself, but it also takes a lot of practice. Be patient, but don't just, go to sleep on it. Remember, languages have varieties that can throw you off. So you learn American English or standard American English, and then you come to the United States and you go to a state where they have a very, very particular accent. It will throw you off. You go like, what? I learned American English and I can't understand Americans. Well, that's because not all Americans speak the same. Same thing if you learn British English and you go to England, you can understand, half the population or more. You learn Italian, you learn standard Italian, you go to, Sicily in the South and you go, why aren't they speaking Italian? And also sometimes speakers have idiolects. An idiolect is a particular way that a speaker has. There are some people that are harder to understand than others. I remember when I was in Belgium, there was one person that I hated talking to in Dutch because I couldn't understand him. I could not understand him. Like the way he talked. It was his specific way of speaking. He kind of garbled. Just chill. You don't have to understand everything, every language variety, and every person. You're just improving. Remember that understanding something that you hear does not mean that you learned the content. That takes practice. That's why I kept repeating that you should listen for content first. As you're listening, you have to understand the content. That takes practice. And don't rely exclusively on instructional materials. They are a sample of the language. They're not necessarily the real language. You should take charge of your learning. Go out and find things to listen to that you want to listen to, things that will add value to you. Okay? Just to recap, make it count. When you listen, don't just like go to YouTube and listen to 15 videos, but what did you learn? Okay? So make it count. Listen broadly first to understand the content. Select unfamiliar topics and familiar topics. Familiar topics are easier to understand. Mix instructional and authentic content. After listening broadly, listen to learn the content really well. That's when you can take notes, outline, summarize. Sometimes you can zone in on specific portions, like I showed with, Manu, the Italian teacher. Go back and listen, isolate specific portions. If that's what you want to do, and then use the information. Why did you listen to? For what purpose? Well, to learn something. Then talk about it. Find somebody to talk about it. Okay. You don't have to do this 1, 2, 3, 4. You can mix and match these. Sometimes you just want to listen to understand the content, and that's it. Sometimes you don't want to zone in on something, then don't. Just listen, take notes, or sometimes you don't want to take notes, then don't. This is where you need to to make your decisions and create your own materials. And remember, I talked about phonological awareness, where you need to know what sounds are in the language. Okay, so when somebody says, beat or bit in English, and you go, beat, bit, what's the difference? Well, do you know what possible vowel sounds exist in the language that you are learning, so that you can listen for these sounds? That will be next week. I always have to do some advertising for next week. We'll talk about pronunciation. So we'll go back and talk about phonological awareness. If everything works out, we're going to have a guest speaker, someone who teaches pronunciation, and she'll share her knowledge with us. Very smart person. Once again, thank you to our members. Rahul Hate, who just joined, Cesar Escamilla, Ian Smirlis, Thais Bras, Dwi Solastiawati, and Roxana Chavez, who's now a veteran. Thank you so much, and thank you for the super chat, Roxana. I really appreciate it. Let me just tie all the loose ends here. Great content so far. Thank you so much, Gustavo Franco, Ellison. But I am. I posted a link to this video on Twitter today with the hope that this brings more people to this channel. I really, 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 really appreciate it. Randolph posted that. Thanks for a fantastic episode. Thank you for being a great audience, Randolph. I really appreciate it. And Choice, thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate you guys. I'm really, really, really pleased that every time I have a new live stream, I have more and more people, sometimes even waiting before it starts. That's like super exciting. I have the wrong screen there. Just quick reminders, you can visit my website, Twitter. Thank you very much, Randolph, for advertising on Twitter, and so Instagram or Twitter. And consider joining the channel like these wonderful people that I just thanked here. You can get more out of the channel, or even more out of the channel. Okay, really appreciate it. I don't see any more questions. Thank you for all the smiley faces that you guys are putting in there. That's really awesome. All right, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You all take care. See you next week.